Welcome to episode 226 of No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
We've had a few GM episodes in the year 2020, and this isn't intentionally a theme, but since the last time we had one, our audience said, keep them coming, we love this kind of stuff. There was one topic that we really could do a deep dive on that we'd only brushed on, and that is adventure paths. For a long time, they have been the cornerstone of the Pathfinder brand. They are probably what people identify most with as far as what is going on in Pathfinder. And here to talk to us about her experience prepping with prepping adventure paths and on both sides of adventure paths is the developer of the Iron Fang Invasion and War for the Crown, and currently the line developer on Mutants and Masterminds at Green Ronin. It is our Adventurous GM, the one and only Crystal Frasier.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Crystal.
How's everybody tonight?
Good. I'm ready to roll for initiative. I feel there's a different chemistry now that you're on this show.
Are you sure you want to roll for initiative? Because I'm pretty sure we only roll diplomacy.
Secretly, Xavier is very good in combat.
Not that it's come up yet.
Has anybody mentioned that to Xavier?
That it's a secret?
That he knows
Everybody
how to fight?
It to Xavier.
Ouch. Ouch.
Or Xavier mentions it to everyone.
So I want this to be a very specific conversation about not just prepping, but adventure path prepping. But we do have to start with, what is prepping? Because I really don't do it.
That's where you lay in a bunch of supplies and canned goods, medical goods, in case society collapses.
Oh, are bunkers involved?
Yes.
Can be, yes.
Okay. I need to.
You mean prepping for a game?
Yes, please.
Oh, so game prep is just getting all the notes together that you as a GM feel like you will need when you sit down to play with your with your players. I mean, I can tell you the basics. I mean, for running an adventure path, read through the sections of the AP that you think they're going to hit up that night. Have the AP volume on hand. Sometimes I print out the stat blocks I think I'm going to need, so I've got them on separate sheets. Make some notes for things you feel like you're likely to forget. I mean, everybody has different places where they're a little weak or a little forgetful. So what notes you prepare are going to vary by GM.
So,
Yeah,
Ryan,
forgetful.
do you remember
Yes,
those
ahead.
awkward pauses that we sometimes have when we're playing Adventurous? When Crystal has to go, wait a minute, I need to go look something up.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah. Think of it as like editing those out in advance.
Oh. But yeah, Crystal, you mentioned the things that you are likely to forget. So one of the reasons that I do not run adventure paths, other than the one time I tried to run Rise of the Rune Lords, is that the experience for me was like, when you walk into a room and you had a reason to go into that room, but you cannot remember at all why you went into that room. It's basically 3 hours of that a week for over a year was me GMing Rise of the Rune Lords.
Oh, no.
So I don't know if it was for lack of prep or if it was just not my style of GMing, but adventure paths is something I wish I could run. It is something that I am interested in, but very bad at. And so I hope by the end of this conversation, I am optimistic that I could be better.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
All right. Now, Param, you are also an experienced GM of adventure paths. So what are your basics? What are your first steps when you are prepping an adventure path?
Well, my very first steps is to find the message board or Discord thread or Reddit threads associated with that adventure path and go and read them, because that's how I learned well in advance. This monster at the top of the clock tower will kill your whole party. Swap it with this other one. Or, like, this trap, it mentions the wrong DCs. Basically, the very first thing I do is I go and see what the reputation of an adventure path is, so I know where to focus my prep. And if I need to go get any errata, the Pathfinder shared prep is also a great resource, because the adventure paths are sanctioned, therefore there's support for those. And also, any given adventure path, if you just Google search it, there are tons of people in the Pathfinder community that have created fun and amazing amounts of support material that they've put out there for it. And running from just like, here's all the stat blocks in one Word document so you can just print them out real easy, to, hey, here's a really cool hand-drawn map of this thing, to, in Rise of the Rune Lords, this book of erotica that this one NPC is supposed to have, well, we drew it for you, and that was what Liz did. Liz Courts, friend of the show.
I'm not even remotely surprised.
So, like, there's all kinds of really cool stuff out there. And that will basically, because adventure paths are so popular, that's my first step. And it sort of channels, like, where I need to pay attention. And then the very next step is, if you can, read through the whole thing. Like, all 6 volumes. Because you can't do this if you're running an adventure path that is currently being published, which I have attempted to do twice.
I never do it.
And it is, in both times I've done it, I have gotten to the next book, and it immediately contradicts something that I did in the first book. It's like, I played up this, in Age of Ashes, there is an NPC who turns out, minor spoilers, is a bad person. But I didn't know that they were supposed to later become a bad person. So I played them as the nicest granny ever. And then Granny got evil and summoned some skeletons. Which I think maybe made her more memorable, but like, yeah. I've had to tap dance on my toes. And if I just waited until most of it had come out, I could have known it well in advance, like where the story is going. Even if you can't read all of it in advance, at least get all of them and skim the summaries in the front and just sort of see where the major plot beats are. But just knowing where it's going at a cursory glance is the most important thing. And if you can, and these aren't humongously long books. If you put all, they're usually only about half to 2/3 of the actual page count of an adventure path is actually the adventure part. And so you're really, what's that times 6, like under 200 pages? No, 280, 320. Anyway, less than the hardcover.
My equivalent of that, of your granny story, was in book 5 of Rise of the Rune Lords, where it's like, now take all of the sins of the PCs that you've been tracking, and it's like, I was supposed to be tracking those? I've been doing this campaign for a year. I don't know. Lots. They've got lots of sin.
Oh, boy.
When they're PCs, just assume they're guilty.
Yeah. But it was supposed to be nuanced and very specific. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And I had the whole book. I had the anniversary edition.
I'll admit up front, I am a much better GM kind of going on the fly than I am following a very tight pre-written adventure. I think the only reason I can do it in War for the Crown is because I developed so much of the adventures.
Okay, well, what are some of the things that, as a developer, you have an advantage of that you think could be translated into ways you could prep for that adventure?
Well, as the developer, I've got a very good, like, high-level view of the entire storyline. Like Perrin was talking about, I've seen the entire adventure start to finish. I know where it's going. I know what NPCs will be major versus minor. I know who's going to backstab you, which is, of course, nobody. No one would ever backstab you. But I also get a very good view of who the major NPCs are supposed to be, what kind of personalities they have, how to play them up. And honestly, one of the things I did back when I was running canned adventures or just my own home campaigns is specifically call out 2 or 3 major personality traits from NPCs as I develop them and get them ready for for my game prep. One of the big things I used to do and still do sometimes is make a little note about what celebrity I'm going to try and badly impersonate to make that character's voice consistent. Because
you have been excellent at your bad impersonations, because I have not recognized a single celebrity.
Exactly. They're so bad.
They are, like, incredibly consistent, though. I do want to talk about the acting side of prep, but I think right now we're still in just getting to know the story, getting to know what's coming for you so that you know what's coming for the players.
Yeah, and for me, Oh, sorry.
No.
I was going to say, for me, it comes down to keeping a little GM book for every single campaign you run. Like, this is the War for the Crown campaign book I've been keeping for myself. That it's got a little bit of information on each of the NPCs in the very first couple pages, just so I remember who's playing what and what level they are and what tactics they like. I've not updated it since you guys leveled, so I need to do that.
Now's our chance, Param. They're vulnerable.
But it also contains like lists of NPCs that you guys all liked that I might want to bring back, and how I portrayed them, or major plot points that you're all working on that might not be listed in the adventure. And I go back and I reread that and figure out, oh, this NPC that they screwed over like 6 months ago that they don't even remember, that person can totally come back and make their lives hell.
Oh no, we have screwed over several NPCs.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I was gonna say, just little things like that can help bring a lot of like a GM's personal style to an adventure path, and aren't necessarily going to be spelled out in all the adventure material itself.
And what Crystal's saying is super important, and I think it's important that people understand that just because you need to know this outward structure of a pre-written adventure doesn't mean you have to follow it. It's so that when you do improvise, you at least know how to loop it back to somewhere you want to get later. Like if you want to cut out this whole section, it helps to know how to tie it back into the next book.
Yeah, back when I was in the developer pit, the phrase that went around is "no plan survives first contact with the PCs." So we wrote every adventure path fully knowing that anything we wrote is probably going to end up being completely useless to the GM by the time the PCs get there. But it gives them at least like a framework and some ideas to work with, and stat blocks they can throw around in new configurations, or, a tool chest that'll be useful.
Yeah, I mean, that's why my Age of Ashes book 1 game, book 2, for the first in-game 3 months, it turned into how to gentrify a goblin neighborhood.
Wow. That feels weirdly dark.
Yeah, it kind of was.
Like, I've killed a bunch of goblin neighborhoods, and that doesn't feel as bad as gentrifying it. What's the difference between your long-term planning and your short-term planning? Like, Crystal, that book you're showing us, is that the full campaign sketched out, or is that up to a certain point?
This is basically everything we've already done. So this is the first 2 volumes of War for the Crown, with, my notes about what the NPCs are doing and how you've interacted with them and how close you are to certain goals and what things are moving in the background. And it's mostly just very short scribbled notes to myself at the end of every session so that I remember what's going on and where to pick up next time on Adventurous.
Now, you've heard me try and reference my own notes real time during the adventure, and they are garbage. It is half-written nonsense that I have no way of referencing back quickly, and so it's page turn, and then it's just like, is this it?
Yeah, I try to keep mine a little better organized. You can see I've got little dividers here.
Oh, tabs.
For, like, here's where we are currently versus, like, here is a specific page I need to reference a lot, so I need to flip back there. It is my big list of NPC attitudes.
Hold on. I'm going to grab my GM notebook because I have an answer to that question. That helps a lot.
All right. Well, while Param's gone, so Crystal, you call your pugs potatoes. They're pugs, right? No, they're
no, corgis.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, my girls have been watching a show called Chip and Potato, and it's about a pug family.
Aww.
And it does that typical kids thing where they'll like mix in the word pug into their vocabulary. I'm puggy happy with you. So I've thought about running a character like that, but a human. That was just human-tastic. That's the only
like
good one I've got so far.
Like an elf that's really into humans and thinks they're adorable.
Oh, that's another twist on it.
Oh, he thinks he's people. Look at his little hands.
I mean,
Param, you missed a good conversation.
I am very sad that I missed it. But
Good thing you'll hear it again when you edit.
This is my GM notebook for my home personal game.
One game?
Huh?
For
That's
one game?
gorgeous.
Yeah. Each game gets their own notebook.
Wow.
Yeah, most of mine are actually these lovely little dot journals. I just couldn't find any of them when I started up this campaign, so I had to grab the first notebook I could find, which was the Spiral Bound. But yeah, most of them are have fun little maps.
Oh, I can pull that map up on screen here.
Oh yes.
There it is.
But yeah, I sent you some pictures from my old homebrew.
I'm so jealous.
Man, that is a really well-drawn map, Crystal.
Yeah.
Maps are very relaxing for me to draw, so I put more time into them than I really need to. But the best part is, because I drew the map, I know what the rooms are supposed to be and how to describe them, and I don't have to label them.
I want to put a pin in that because I definitely want to go back to drawing and how that affects your campaign. But Param, could you tell us a little bit more about the way that Dungeon Novice explains it? It's not a notebook, it's a tome.
Yes. But first, for the listeners at home, we just showed a very well-drawn map with lots of cross-hatching, and it basically looks like it came right out of a dungeon's personal cartographers.
Yeah, I could definitely see my character picking that up. Like that is a handout ready to happen.
Okay, so I kind of went a little bit overboard with this one. I had a leather maker hand bind this and I sent them like pewter decorations to insert into the bindings and.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so what I do with this notebook, and this is how I organize all my campaigns, is I do have little divider tabs, and I divide them up into ways my brain understands what I'm trying to look for when I'm trying to reference something. So the very first thing is when you open the notebook, there's a set of pages that aren't behind any divider, and that is the notes for the current session. Like this is what I know I'm going to need now. And then it is... The first tab is the campaign background and a summary of the story as the players have influenced and or ruined it. Then it goes into the campaign NPCs section, and that's divided to first the baddies, and each of the baddies has like just a little dot matrix. It's like here's their name, here's their species alignment, the standard thing, and then it's like little dot important notes that I need to remember. For instance, Kellic. The main BBEG was a retainer to House Thrune. Is actually a wraith stuck between worlds, but they don't know it yet. Yeah, it basically goes through there, and it includes things like voice, measured, perfectly articulate. Make sure you pronounce the T's hard.
Ooh.
And then from there on out, it's like in character summary of what happened, like rules reference, and the back is like stat blocks. Basically, it's what I need to know is organized in the category because of what I'm likely to forget, and that so I can flip to it easy enough. And the other part of this that is tucked in here is my name stick, which is the most important reference I have.
The name stick? I assume it's the list.
It is a bookmark. It's a long bookmark that has a list of random names on one side of it, and on the other side of it, I write down the important names that I need to know right now that will be relevant to the plot of the campaign, the session we're playing in, so that I can either glance down and see what NPC that's important for them to know, or temple or city name or whatever. And then on the flip side is when I need a name in a hurry, I just flip it. And because it's the bookmark I'm using through the whole session, my name stick is always in my fingers.
I like that. I mostly just use Post-its. But that's brilliant.
Is it a new name stick every time? Like the random names are custom to the campaign at all?
I generate a new stick every so often. Make sure that, like, if I start a new campaign, it's a new stick. And then once I fill the blank side of the stick up with notes, or I need to reference a completely different set of NPCs for a session, I just generate a new stick. And how I do it is really
handy. I'm having trouble picturing this because you keep calling it a stick, and I want to picture like a drumstick. Oh, he's going off. All right, what cartoons have you been watching?
Oh, Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts. It's been phenomenal.
Yes, so that's one of the shows I've been watching over Scarlett's shoulder from time to time. So I haven't followed it. I just get really interesting scenes with no context whatsoever that I get to try and piece together when like 3 or 4 episodes apart.
It would make a phenomenal role-playing game. My attempts to get NPC Universal to notice me and get me to make games for them have so far fallen on deaf ears.
That's who puts that's an NBC Universal. I thought it was Netflix original.
Netflix original goes through NBC DreamWorks
Oh,
or
really?
NBC Universal for a lot of their original animation.
Oh, okay.
So like, She-Ra and Dragon Prince and Troll Hunters. A bunch of the Netflix original animated series come through DreamWorks Animation and NBC Universal.
Yeah, those are all good shows. Right. I guess Param's still looking for it. He came back to his chair, but he's not back on his mic.
No, I think that's a great idea. I need to steal that.
Yeah, so I don't have it handy because I just cleaned up the game room, and I have no idea where I put it. Which means I need to make a new stick before tomorrow's session. But
Oh, no.
I can kind of show you how I make one normally. Is I go into Microsoft Word or any Google Docs, it doesn't matter. And all down the left-hand side, I set it into 4-column layout, and then I make the margins real small. And then I go get my favorite random list of names, which changes what source I get it from depending on what I'm doing. And I never remember what they are, so I can't recommend sites. I used to use Ebon, the Everlasting Book of Names, but I can't find it anymore.
Oh.
And then I print out just the one column printed out. And then I take the piece of paper with it printed out, I fold it in half, and then I fold it in half again so that the list of names is down one side of what becomes a bookmark.
Yep.
And then the other
Nice.
side is blank where I keep notes on the important things I need to know.
Very
Why
nice.
is it a stick?
Because it's stick-shaped.
You're gonna throw off his groove, man.
It quit
just
being
let
a
him work.
sheet when it got folded up into several pieces.
I know, but it's still several more folds before it's a stick.
Well, I
Is
like
this a
it.
Canadian thing?
I
Are you
invented it.
serious?
I get to call it the
About-
name stick.
Yeah,
Ronald
he
Valorant.
invented it.
Chat says they had a friend wwho used IKEA catalogs to get character names for a Star Trek: The Next Generation game.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
good.
clever.
Here we go.
Oh, Crystal,
This-
you reaching for something?
I am. If we're talking about our favorite resources, if I've got the time and I think of it, I like to pull up my Storyteller's Thesaurus
Ooh.
before a game and look up specific terms that I know will come up a lot. Like if they're in the dungeon, I'm going to look up putrid or stinking or sewage and look up a few other words for it just to remind myself that other words exist. So I don't just keep saying sewage.
You sewagely travel through the sewage, and it's sewages all over your sewage-strewn clothes.
Yeah, those mouse clicks you hear in the background are me ordering that book.
It is a great book. There's also a Storyteller's Dictionary that I need to pick up, but that just is basically a big old list of anachronistic words.
Who puts those out?
Oh, it's from James M. Ward, from Chenault and Gray Publishing, and Troll Lord Games.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
So
man,
we were. Oh, go ahead, Pam.
I said I lost the thread.
That's all right. So we can. I wanted to talk about illustrations and how that can help with prep. So one of the ideas I had, I guess I should say, one of my motivations for this episode was that I will be running Extinction Curse at the Office Pathfinder game when there's an Office to have a Pathfinder game at again. And unfortunately, is not a completed adventure path yet. So a lot of your advice from early on, Param, I was like, nope, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable.
Which one are
Well,
you
one of the
playing?
ideas-
Extinction Curse?
Extinction Curse, yeah, it's only up
Okay.
to book 4. We haven't started yet.
Oh.
But one of my ideas was that I would draw the NPCs, even if art is provided, just so that I have a certain amount of ownership over the NPCs and a little more familiarity, and just kind of to juice different parts of my brain. And I wonder, Crystal, if that kind of lines up with you as the developer with art orders, and if that is what helps you familiarize yourself with all of the so many NPCs that you've got in War for the Crown.
It does help. Obviously, there's not art for every single NPC, and I think just having to sit there and figure out their place in the story and what their motivation for being there is and why they would get in a fight with these much higher level, better armed people. I mean, figuring all that out also gives me a lot of ownership over them.
I was a really big fan of the Face Card series back when Paizo used to put it out, especially when they started doing adventure path specific ones for the same purpose. And you can get those little, you can get like wedding table name holders for like super cheap online. That, yeah, you've got some.
Well, so this isn't exactly what you're saying. This is just a card holder. It's kind of like a Scrabble thing, but for cards.
Right.
I think it's a Dogmite. I got a couple of these from Dogmite when, anyway, it was Board Game Mentor related. So,
yes. So I see, you know where I'm going. So I get those little things and I put them in front of my GM screen in order. Either like, here's the important people right now that you're working with, or here's all the people in the scene right now with their name very clearly visible to everybody.
Nice.
So that's useful for the running, but I think even if the face was provided, just one of my ideas is like I will just redraw those faces just to input them into my brain.
I would do that for my old.
Well, no, it would just force me to stare at the picture, rethink of what their name is, rethink of why these details exist, and would force me to analyze images in a way that I don't usually do.
And that's exactly why I outline the adventure path, and especially the session before I run a session. I outline the session as I expect it to go, because even just the process of reading through it and taking notes and building that outline, I will not look at it, but it would just builds it in my brain because I took information, processed it, and created something out of it.
A lot of classic study aids are really useful for GM prep.
You got a couple of favorites?
Oh, well, like Perrin was talking about, outlining things to get the information and the sequence of events straight in your mind. I mean, that's the big one that came to mind. And now that I'm on the spot, I'm completely blanking.
There's a advice piece in chat that I actually use, and I've lost who said it. But the basic bit of advice was, when you are doing a character voice, come up with a phrase that you associate with that character that you can say. And just by saying that phrase before you get started doing the voice will remind you and put your brain in that motive. And like for Glenville, for instance, if at the beginning of every episode, go because that gets my walrus ready.
Deploy the walrus.
There's an anecdote I remember from a Montreal comedian. He does that. He would often do these live improv shows on the radio, and a lot of times the suggestion would be like, such and such a famous person meets such and such a famous character. And so someone asked for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his go-to was like, F you a-hole, but not censored. And he said that on the radio, just unconsciously, just to trigger the voice back again, and got in some trouble for that.
Oh dear.
Yes.
Luckily, we're not on the radio.
We are an all ages podcast.
I know. I didn't say anything that we're not allowed to say. Just got close.
Fraggle Rock!
Oh, man. Actually, that really does help. If I come up with custom curses that an NPC would say, it really helps me memorize their personalities.
Sweet crispy walnuts. That's genius.
I one time was running First Steps, and the what's his name, the guy who was in charge of the Sarnie, I had the idea that he would swallow his R's, and so it was like the Z, and it's like, okay, that's kind of cool and characterful, but I did not practice, and so when I got to the session and his first paragraph of dialogue all has a whole bunch of R's, and I'm just like, and so you kind of ruined the effect I was going for. So
sort of
I wondered,
asthmatic.
how much do you practice the NPCs that you plan on running?
I mean,
Crystal will say.
Personally, I guess a medium amount. It depends on the NPC. So if it's somebody who's going to recur a few times, then I'll practice in the mirror beforehand. A lot of the minor NPCs I don't really practice, but I'm just the sort of person who repeats things she sees on TV or talks to herself while she's working. So it's not really difficult for me to slip into those little side personalities.
I did think that a lot of your voices seemed really familiar in the context of like 1970s and 1980s kids cartoons.
I've been found out.
Like, how did you practice the Domovoy?
What voice did I use for the Domovoy?
3 different, fairly high-pitched ones. I don't think I could repeat it.
I think I just based them on the Three Stooges.
That sounds about accurate, but like as they would appear in Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm. Which, of course, was my first introduction to the Three Stooges.
And my first introduction to Batman.
Wow.
I think mine too, actually. Wow, Scooby-Doo is responsible for so much. Zoinks.
Pam, we are trucking along through this, and it just occurred to me that we haven't really told the audience that if they have any questions, they could participate too.
Indeed, because we record these episodes live in front of a Twitch audience, and if you want to participate in them, tune in every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern. 8:30 is when we do the prep for it, and be in the Twitch chat. You ask any questions you have for us or our guests about the topic at hand. We will periodically go through those questions and try to get them some answers.
Right now, chat is mostly talking about the different celebrities that they were introduced to through Scooby-Doo. Dungeon Knobs is bringing up the Harlem Globetrotters. It's good.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
I was surprised when I found out they weren't cartoon characters. And then I found out they really were.
Yep. Mama Cass.
Mama Cass, okay. She crossed over with Scooby-Doo?
Yeah, like twice. At one point, she owned a candy factory.
Actually, you know what? My kids were introduced to Kiss through the recent Kiss meets Scooby-Doo. Which
Nice.
is pretty solid, but has like a really nutty Jack Kirby-esque psychedelic sequence that is actually pretty much just written off as, oh yeah, you all had a group hallucination.
Uh-huh. Group hallucination. The Hex Girls, who are actually original to Scooby-Doo, so it's not that surprising that I found out about them through Scooby-Doo.
I don't know who the Hex Girls are.
Oh, it's a very wonderful set of characters, Ryan.
All right, I will look up the Hex Girls.
It's this goth girl band who really should have their own spin-off series by now, but
I was surprised at like the cult following that formed around the Hex Girls. Like it was really strong for a while.
you know, they make great side characters in an adventure path.
There we go. Thank you, Crystal.
So yeah, everybody watching this, figure out what adventure path you're running that you could add the Hex Girls to in one way or another.
I wrote an article not too long ago for the Behind the Screens blog about how you can use pop culture to help you improvise, and I feel like in adventure paths, you're improvising when people go off the path, when they're off the tracks, and you need to come up with ways to just fill time until you can get them back into the book. So, what are some ways that you can improvise nudgingly to get them back on path?
Oh, how do you get PCs back on path? I mean, the easiest way I've had is to figure out what they're going after as they go off on their own and put that in the hands of whatever the actual plot is. So if you guys are suddenly obsessed with tracking down a new character's secret spy contact, for example, then I make that secret spy contact the villain in another part of the campaign that you have to go find.
Oh, we'll find him.
Ryan, he's been dead for 6 months.
Doesn't matter. There's spells.
Didn't stop him from stabbing me. I agree with especially with what Crystal does, is like the core point of any adventure path is where it's going, not where they are. And all you have to do is like figure out what the MacGuffins are and move their location and make sure and make them interesting to the NPC. Change the MacGuffins. If you see that your NPCs are completely interested in running this distillery and marketing different dwarf beers that are all actually disgusting and no one should drink across the entire continent of Avestan, you make sure that the necromancer is a rival that wants to insert zombie juice into their brews and make it so addictive that it makes everyone who drinks it turn into a zombie, but only eventually.
You know what I would do? I'd actually make the big bad their number one customer and is actually using their disgusting dwarven brews as a spell component. So they've got some ownership over the disaster and more likely to try and fix it.
Yeah, it always
if
helps
only to salvage.
Sorry.
I was going to say, if only to help salvage their reputations.
I do find that when making it all their fault, it really helps. And most of the time it is.
Yeah, that was one of the big no-nos for official adventure path design, was never make it the PC's fault. But, I mean, let's be honest. As GMs, we know that that's the easiest and most likely outcome.
Also, find out what they absolutely care about and make what you want them to fight against, not destroy it or hurt it or kidnap it, but just inconvenience it or threaten to damage it. You don't want to, because if you have them kill off the favorite NPC, well, then you've lost that plot hook forever. But if they go through the effort of helping get the NPC's voice back from the evil witch, then they're going to care all that much more about her when she decides that she's going to run off into the woods in order to save her favorite pet dog.
Yep. I actually had a scenario exactly like that in one of my non-AP home games, where the PCs were utterly fixated on a side NPC whose name I pulled off of my random name list at one point. And so I had the big bad evil that they'd killed, had his spirit possess her and use her body for a return. So suddenly they were really invested, not just in stopping the big bad evil, but in doing it in a way that didn't kill their favorite NPC.
If you're doing your job right as a GM and letting your players have enough fun, they will eventually care about something, and you can use that to your advantage, like a hostage taker.
Oh, Sheppy's got an interesting point about this. Said that he ran a massive battle in Sandpoint. Almost all NPCs died. It was very emotional. Oof. Then they didn't care at all about anyone that was left because Sandpoint was just kind of dead to them.
Oof. Well, I mean, that's pretty realistic. I mean, that mirrors how you feel after a big trauma in a place. You don't feel as strong an emotional tie to it, or you might even have an aversion to it.
We also got two very different questions from chat. Elk Frody is asking about alternate rule sets, so either bringing in ones from like Pathfinder Unchained or using ones that are incorporated into the Adventure Path. And Buster Knuckles says, how do you handle a character that angered a god? Let's say, for example, Grodius. So I'd like to handle Buster Knuckles' question first.
You don't go heavy-handed with it, because heavy-handed just blows all your spectacle all at once. You just do a tiny thing that might have been Grodius's, but might have just been random happenstance. Like, maybe a tooth falls out next morning, and like their breath is really bad, and man, you're sweaty all day, and just have them make random saving throws that don't mean anything.
Oh yeah, my favorite thing when players do something really, really big and dumb is at the beginning of every session, I just ask them to make a saving throw, and then I go, and scribble something down on a sheet of paper.
I had to double check to make sure Grodius wasn't the god of hygiene with all those weird examples of your Sparrow.
But if you do it right, your player will start to feel like everything that comes up in plot is the result of one of those saving throws they made, and they will torture themselves for you. I mean,
that actually, it's funny because Param and I were both guests on a podcast recently. Param, what was the Attack of Opportunity podcast? We were each guests on different episodes, and in Param's, he was like, "Oh, Crystal's really having to improvise during Adventurous. We go off the track so often." And when the same topic came up, I was like, "I don't know if she has," and so I don't know how much you've had to improvise because of our antics, Crystal. But if so, it's been flawless. It's been completely smooth and undetectable.
Gone off the beaten trail a couple of times, but not hugely. I mean, mostly like you'll develop interest in side NPCs that aren't fleshed out or didn't exist in the original. So I end up having to flesh them out a little on the fly. Like, believe it or not, old Jed is not officially in the adventure.
What?
I know, right?
And he's got so much more personality than everyone else in that town.
He's just louder than everyone else in the town.
And this also revealed a fun secret that you need, as a GM, you need to make a promise to yourself to never let the PCs know when you cheat, change, or add anything. Or, like, don't tell them. Like, make it the prestige of the game master screen in the plan. They want to feel like they're involved in something that is orchestrated and planned out and elaborate, and they're part of something bigger. They don't want to know that at the very last minute you realized that you were using the wrong stat block and then had to switch mid-fight. Yeah. He just had fire breath because he was an evil, evil man and not accidentally stuck to the Red Dragon page.
Yeah, they never want to know that the dungeon they just finished was in no way related to the adventure, and you just, like, grabbed an old issue of Dungeon magazine and...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it works both ways too, because I remember when I was playing God of War, there was one time I was like, "Oh, I figured out super clever. I'm going to go into some secret area. I am so clever," and it just ended up being the way. And I was like, "Oh, everyone has to be exactly as clever as I was to move on with this game," and it was a little deflating.
Aww.
Yeah. And then there's the old trope, Ryan, related to that. Is when you hear your players come up with wacky, fun theories about what's going on. Sure, you all were smart. You figured that out. Like, how werewolves the whole time. How'd you all figure that out?
It's werewolves all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Valor in chat has a really interesting suggestion or anecdote. They say their wife GMs like Eddie Izzard with regular asides to herself about how the game's going. I like that.
I've never done that. Love to watch that. Your wife needs to host an actual play.
There's an example later of like, do you think they noticed we forgot to roll for that? Nah, I think they'll just go anyway.
She needs an extra camera here that she can turn to.
So Elk Frody's question, the one about alternate rule set. How do you prepare for campaign-specific rules?
Ooh, I have had a lot of bad luck using alternate rule sets in games. First, you need to make sure that your players know it, like inside and out. If you're having to every session explain how this random rule set works, they're not actually playing with it. They're just guessing and improvising or not even engaged with it at all, and it's adding nothing to your campaign. And you need to ask yourself, do you even need this? And if the answer is yes, if it's really cool, if it's something like we saw in the Game Mastery
subsystem in Extinction Curse,
or the circus subsystem in I know nothing about the circus subsystem in Extinction Curse because
but you know Extinction Curse is the circus AP, right? If you took out that subsystem,
yeah, I know you have to level up your circus. If it is cool, you need to make sure that your players all know about it and that you're using it actively and it's not a surprise when it comes up. Or it needs to be so dead simple, like the victory points, the victory points presented in the Game Mastery Guide that also appear in so many Pathfinder Society adventures, where it's pretty brilliant and super easy to understand and very easy to implement even improvisationally. And that way it sort of works.
Yep, there's a modified victory point system going on in the AP you're in right now.
And we're winning it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Good work, Ryan.
It's diplomacy based.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I don't run with a lot of alternate rule systems aside from the tacked on, I shouldn't say tacked on, the additional rule sets that go with certain APs, like the kingdom building rules for Kingmaker, things like that. I have run Pathfinder APs with different rule systems from the ground up, but that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, like for instance, in Wrath of the Righteous, we tried using the actual mass combat rules for it, and it just was not working at all because one of my players min-maxed their character, not intentionally. They just wanted to be the best leader that they could be because they were trying to play the mythical leader. They were trying to be the Alexander the Great kind of character, the Joan of Arc character. And what ended up happening is any army that she stood near was invincible, unkillable god machines. And it made the whole section just like really, really pointless. And then we ended up switching to my favorite method of handling these mass combats, which is the Final Fantasy method. We're going to have a set of small battles in crowds where you fight 3 or 4 or 8 of representations of the enemies while around you your battle's going on. And I'll use the victory points kind of system to determine how many combat rounds it takes you to beat them. The longer, the worse your army did.
That is clever.
Yeah, it's a great system.
So Elk Frody's question also specifically calls out that they are currently prepping to run War for the Crown with the loyalties system from Pathfinder Unchained. I don't know if you are familiar enough with the loyalties system to weigh in on that.
I'm not, unfortunately. I don't even know where my copy of Pathfinder Unchained is right now.
I think that's like a mini faction system. If like the Pathfinder Society did, and then you made the faction guide with all the different factions. It's like a faction, but it's just the one NPC. So you earn like fame towards that NPC.
I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'm so sorry.
Well, since they did bring up Pathfinder Unchained, if you are going back and running a first edition adventure path that has a subsystem that also appears in Pathfinder Unchained or Ultimate Campaign, I would go for the hardcover version because those have been playtested and reworked and updated based on feedback from the APs. And like Param, like you were saying, a lot of times the AP specific subsystems as they appear in the APs are a little wonkier than they probably should be.
That is fair. It's often they get put together, I mean, not at the last minute, but they're built alongside a bunch of other things going on and don't get the amount of like specific love and attention they probably need.
I am hopeful because second edition subsystems seem to be based around the downtime rules, which are in the core rulebook. And so it isn't just like, and here's a whole new thing you just lump on top of your rules. It's like, here's rules you know, here's how to implement this version of those rules you know. So I am hopeful that at least when I try out the circus subsystem, that it's not going to be super awkward to implement. But this is all theoretical because I still have not read book 1 and I have no players.
You gonna be a clown, Ryan?
Well, I'm going to be the GM, so I'll be plenty of clowns.
So you need to dress as the ringleader.
No, you need to dress as a clown.
Yeah, oh,
it's the only way to win the respect, Ryan.
You could dress as an elephant.
I have like a whole ringleader speech and song prepared.
That's why I dress like a clown every day.
But speaking of the ringleader, and Param, you brought this up. I was planning on figuring out who was going to be the ringleader when whatever happens to the ringleader that starts in the AP, whenever that happens, and a PC becomes the ringleader. I was going to put them in charge of the subsystem, the circus subsystem, because it just feels thematic and it feels like then the role within the group is also the role within the party.
I do find that if you do that, handing them a prop that ties into the theme of the adventures, like don't just
a giant top hat.
No,
yes!
Like an old beat up turn of the century notebook style thing with like yellowed paper and stuff in it.
But top hat.
Can we put that notebook in the top hat?
Absolutely.
Can it be sparkly?
Yes. Why wouldn't it be?
Stuff it with rabbits.
No, that's magicians. No, wrong top hats. That's like giving them a carrot nose and saying, well, it's a top hat. Come on, Param. Dungeon Novice is asking, interesting question. How do you handle divination magic? I would assume in a long form pre-printed adventure path, it's actually easier to handle divination magic because you can literally reference what is coming.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. That is the huge advantage of APs is you know what's coming and you can kind of hint towards it.
Yep.
I like being vague and using symbolism that I can go back and reference later. Like, you will fight the white rabbit, and like the PCs pick a random fight in the future, and then they see the guy's got a rabbit tattoo on his back.
So the Matrix.
Yeah. I pull up a lot of Alice in Wonderland symbolism.
Graham, were you cracking your knuckles in anticipation for fighting the White Rabbit?
Oh yeah, of course.
White Rabbit, eh? Crack.
Bunnies have brought me nothing but pain.
But since the Matrix has come up, is there any way of looking at an adventure path and seeing the Matrix, seeing the code, seeing like, okay, this thing is actually the MacGuffin, and using like literary terms to help with the preparation of the adventure path?
That's how I do it. Because I know the tropes, I break it all down that way. Like if you look at my notes, it literally is MacGuffin is this, BBEG is this.
It
Like,
also helps to know that the 5th volume of every adventure path takes you to another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
You okay there, Ryan?
Does it? Hold on. Carrying
checks out.
Crown didn't, but it kind of did.
Yeah. I know it holds true for Reign of Winter, Rise of the Rune Lords, Shattered Star. It also holds true for Wrath of the Righteous.
Oh, one of the recurring arguments I had back when I was part of the Adventure Path team was I always wanted to make the alternate dimension adventure the first one. Where
Get it out of the way.
Yeah, you jump right into an alternate dimension, and you don't have the dimensional magic to just get home whenever you want. And every time I brought that up, they're like, "Oh, you can't do that. Everybody will die because planar adventures are high level." And I'm really bad at impersonating James Jacobs. But so I finally got my way with what was the name of the adventure path we were talking
Invasion?
about? No.
Tyrant's Grasp?
Or for the Crown?
Pirate's Grasp,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
I got my way with Tyrant's Grasp, where you start in the boneyard.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
I had an idea for an adventure path where you just come across a riff, and when they send in the high-level adventurers, they are too attuned to the material plane, and it just blows them up. And so you need to find somebody who has the competence of an adventure, but more potential than actual grounding. And so you have to send a group of first-level adventurers into this other plane.
Goobers. You got to feed it goobers.
But they're the only ones that won't explode from their own awesomeness, because it's material plane awesomeness. It doesn't attune to the new plane.
Oh yeah, I have a whole planar adventure path like outlined and ready to be written that I could never get cleared by the higher ups. But I so want it to be a real thing, because you start out from level 1, like trotting the planes, trying to get home, leaping from plane to plane.
Is that something superheroes could do? In
Kind
Masterminds?
of, but Mutants and Masterminds doesn't have this well-developed planar cosmology, because it's just not as huge an element in superhero comics. It would have to be something I wrote for, say, Fantasy Age, or using like the Pathfinder compatibility license. But I also don't have time to sit down and write like 6 parts of an AP.
Well, they come in 3-parters now, at least for Starfinder.
Yeah, how are the fans liking those?
A lot.
A
from
lot.
what I understood.
Yeah.
Really?
I like them a lot.
All right.
I like it because it you do have a big complete story arc, and it feels kind of, impressive. You don't have that drawn out middle chapter that a lot of APs have, where this is the AP where we're just kind of stalling until the bad can happen. And then you also have the opportunity to either front end it with other adventures or go on to more adventures. Whereas if you're running an adventure path, you're spending 3 years with one thematic element that rules over everything. You don't have the opportunity to go, well, I'm kind of tired of this dancing hut. Let's go fight pirate sharks.
Ooh, pirate sharks. Well, speaking of 80s series.
Was there a Pirate Shark series?
No, but it sounds like it should be one.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now, are they pirates that ride sharks, or are they just plain old sharks that are pirates?
I think they're sharks that are pirates.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the vein of Tiger Sharks and Street Sharks.
Yeah, Street Sharks just got mentioned. Dungeon Novice wants a Street Shark RPG.
Yeah, you and me too. Or you and me both. Like, again, with my ability to get in touch with people in Hollywood and say, I'll make RPGs out of your properties.
Bester
I would
Knuckle
kickstart the heck out of that.
Buster Knuckle, of course, references the greatest of all old school cartoons, Pirates of Dark Waters.
Not biker mice from Mars?
Oh no.
Were there sharks in that?
I'm sure they fought a shark at some point.
Probably.
But there's already a Pirates of Dark Water RPG.
Is there?
Yeah, it's called 50 Fathoms.
Okay.
Also, there's the original Pirates of Dark Water RPG published
Is
in the
there?
early 90s. Yes!
Wow.
It actually exists. It's terrible.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Going through
yeah.
the old box items for RPGs is sometimes an adventure you need not have.
Yeah.
Recently
A
heard
lot
about a
of-
Master of the Universe board game that was really just 2/3 of an RPG that they were like, it's done. And just sold it as a
Yeah.
board game that no one could play.
I've got the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs RPG that's kind of the same. I love the setting, I love the animated series, I like the comics. The RPG is basically unplayable.
All right, I'm willing to drift into this aside, but I do want to let anyone know that's in chat if you have any more questions about planning or prepping to run an AP, get them in now because we've started talking cartoons and there's no getting us out of this.
Yeah, you really should know if you have me on, we're just going to talk about 80s and 90s cartoons.
I mean,
Now, we're
no
all fans
objection
of,
there.
Yeah.
we're all fans of Street Sharks here, but how many people here want to see my Extreme Dinosaurs RPG?
Go on.
Yes.
It's based on how jawsome you are, so it's borrowing the rules from my Street Sharks RPG.
How do I get more Jossum?
Yes, well, the key is to level up until you become extreme,
Go on. Yeah.
and then you get the dinosaur template.
Now, do I actually get to eat people?
We'll say yes.
Yes.
But
That
never
was
on
always the
screen.
problem with like T-Rex or shark-based cartoons, and it's like, you got all those teeth, eat something, or someone.
Right? Well, I mean,
Solve your problems with teeth.
to be fair, the Street Sharks bit their way through just about everything, so they used those teeth, just not on people.
Well, like, how
Usually.
many more problems would have been solved if they took that next step?
Yeah, like, I mean, you could have just eaten Dr. Pteranodine in the second episode, and
Done.
would have saved everybody a lot of trouble.
Buster Knuckles says, can they mention Mummies Alive? Any fond Mummies Alive memories?
Oh.
I wish it was one of those that started airing like after I started high school. So I was leaving for school at that point in my life. I had to catch the bus at 5:30 because they bussed me into the city. So I missed a lot of morning cartoons from that era.
I had to catch that one like in its second run era back when, when the Saturday morning cartoons didn't earn their next seasons. And so they didn't quite make it to syndication. So they got shown at like 5 a.m. on other stations.
Yeah.
Crystal, have you come across Super Dinosaur yet?
I have not. That looks amazing. What is that
It's
from?
amazing. From Super Dinosaur. So Robert Kirkman and a friend just wanted to prove they could make a kids show. Well, it started as a comic, and then it got adapted into a kids show that was only picked up by YTV in Canada. And then somehow action figures were made that only showed up in Toys R Us in Canada, because we still have our Toys R Us. And there is an app game that I've been playing called Kick and Tail that my girls have seen me play over my shoulder, and so I downloaded it onto their iPads, and then Tina saw them playing. So the whole family is playing Super Dinosaur. We're probably the only 4 people playing this game.
Ryan, you have to send me those action figures. Are they still selling them?
They are. They're peg warming because nobody knows Super Dinosaur except I really know Super Dinosaur.
I will send you money. Send me Super Dinosaur figures.
I-
Chat, send me Super Dinosaur figures.
And then here's his human companion, Derek Dynamo,
Aw,
who's
that's
got
great.
an awesome little like
a
roller
little-
board thing, but it's impossible to stand him on it, so he's got to have the 1 foot down when I pose him. But yeah, I should have brought Robot Dinosaur up with you earlier because this is way up your alley,
Right?
Crystal.
Yeah, that is exactly my jam. All right,
Darth
well,
Christoph says Crystal's reaction is the joy we needed in this dumbest timeline.
I really need to make that for Mutants and Masterminds now. Oh,
Please do.
am I allowed to name drop stuff from Eminem? I know it's not
Yeah.
your network brand. But
Yeah.
I'm
In fact, now's a good time to start plugging all kinds of stuff.
So I just released the Time Traveler's Codex for Mutants and Masterminds, which is your guide to using time travel as a major plot element and superpowers related to time travel and gear related to time travel. But one of the sample heroes in the player section is Hyper-Intelligent Dinosaur.
Nice.
I am so proud of that. I basically made the whole book as an excuse to as padding for the hyper-intelligent dinosaur.
And which book was this again?
The Time Traveler's Codex.
Okay. Wonderful.
So Iruvana shared the Super Dinosaur trailer, and I just see there's also a commercial for the action figures, which I've never seen. So I think after we're done this episode, I'm going to do a deep dive in this YouTube channel.
I thought the cartoon was the commercial for the action figures. Isn't that how it's supposed to go?
Oh, you're not supposed to say it out loud.
The actual commercials have to cut to the kids playing with them, and you can see the kid holding them with their hand. There's great Dio stuff that you only see in a split second in the background that you know somebody spent weeks on.
I never know where they got all those cool, like, plastic clear cubes that things would punch through.
Crash, yeah.
Well, craft stores mostly, in my experience.
I
Bastille
spent very
says
little
the
time
UK
at my...
Sorry, the UK has dinosaurs on their 50 pence coins right now. That's cool.
The world needs more dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, not to be outdone, Canada did have the Optimus Prime silver dollar.
You just need to have me on next week, and we'll just talk about dinosaurs for an hour.
We will have a whole dinosaur-themed episode somehow.
All right, we have to dedicate a solid 10 minutes to Microraptors.
To Microraptors?
Microraptors.
Are these real things, or is that a cartoon that I don't know?
I mean, well, first of all, that would be an amazing cartoon. But they're an actual kind of dinosaur. They're like your Archaeopteryx and your other like turkey-sized and smaller theropods that ran around and had wings, and usually had wings on their back legs as well.
But how little, are we talking?
Like
how many could I fit in my pocket?
Like cargo shorts? Like
Sure, cargo shorts.
Like 4 or 5.
Well, that's all right.
You'd really regret it, though.
Oh.
It's like land.
Yeah, they get down
Soundwave,
to like,
just deploy them.
they get down to like cockatiel sized.
Oh, I could definitely stick a cockatiel in my pocket.
That's going on your tombstone. Ryan Costello, I could totally stick a cockatiel in my pocket. Last words.
Oh, now I know how I die.
Well, she did write the time travel book.
I literally wrote the book on time travel, except I didn't do most of the writing. I outlined it, and then
I saw
picked
John Compton did some writing for it.
Yeah, John Compton and I used to geek out about Mesoamerican archaeology back when we both worked together at Paizo. Mm-hmm. And so when I needed somebody to write a section about Mesoamerica and the history thereof, who would, not be super racist, I went to him. Well, first I went to one of my favorite authors who's Hispanic, who unfortunately passed away last year. So, yeah. But John was a great second choice.
I have talked archaeology with him, but never on the podcast. We should probably have John on. We haven't had John on in a long time, Barum.
Yeah,
you should have John on. He's a delight.
John's on the to-do list right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, Crystal, this was educational. It was fun, as always. Where can people find out more about you?
I am most active on Twitter at Amazon Chic, CHIQUE, or you can just Google Crystal Frasier Twitter. I'm over on the Green Ronin website writing blogs from time to time. And I have a blog that I haven't updated in like 5 years over on Tumblr. So
I don't think I've ever complimented you on the spelling of Frasier, but as someone who Googles Brendan Fraser a lot, it annoys me that he doesn't have an I in his last name. So well done spelling your last name right.
There's like 8 different ways to spell Frasier, and each one is a different clan, and we've all been at war with each other for 500 years.
All right. Well, don't go to war with Brendan Fraser, Crystal. I don't want to choose sides.
No, I want a peace accord with Brendan Fraser.
There you go.
I really want that peace accord.
Can you tell him to spell his name properly if you ever get
Well,
that?
if we get married, he'll have to take my last name.
How does your wife feel about this?
We've actually talked about this. She's okay with me marrying Brendan Fraser, and basically only Brendan Fraser.
All right, that's fair.
See, that's why it's important to talk with your spouse about what celebrities you can and can't marry.
Brendan Fraser's a good choice.
I feel like.
Anything else you want to plug? Anything? Where can people buy stuff like the Time Traveler's Handbook? That was the name, right?
Yep, the Time Traveler's Codex. It's available on greenronin.com. You can pick it up over at Drive-Thru. Also, if you like me as an adventure developer, I'm currently developing a line of superhero adventures called Astonishing Adventures for Mutants and Masterminds that are adaptable to your favorite home system. So we are just about to kick off an adventure series called Nether War, which is yeah.
And of course, if people want to hear your advice in action, they can listen to Adventurous every other week here on the No Direction Network.
Oh yes, I do that thing.
I was not prompting you to get that. I was just figuring, you know what, might as well plug Adventurous. It's one of my favorite things.
Good to add.
Irvana has one question.
Oh.
Crystal, are you working on Blue Rose at all?
I do writing on Blue Rose, but I'm not the line developer. I'm just I got to write the like 2.5 pages they have on gender, and that's what Green Ronin that's the first time I interacted with Green Ronin, and they liked my work enough that they kept having me back to write other things. So I've helped with all of the age system. No, I guess I haven't written for Fantasy Age, but I've written for Blue Rose. I did some adventure writing for Modern Age. I developed the Age of Lazarus campaign setting. I do some writing on the Expanse RPG.
Does that mean Blue Rose has been around longer than I realized, or do I just think of you as a Green Ronin, like associate you with Green Ronin because you do so much now?
I guess Blue Rose has been out for what, 3-4 years now?
Okay, I would have said 2.
Yeah, the new edition has been. The first edition is like 15 or 20 years old at this point.
All right, Crystal, we got some news to get to, so thanks once again for joining us, and we will see you in a couple of weeks when we record the next Adventurous.
All right, thank you for having me. Take care.
We'll be right back with the news right after this.
And it's broke.
Oh, no. Just the layout, or?
Oh, there you go.
Because I can hear it.
I got it fixed. Yes.
Okay.
So, and we're back.
In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about all the latest happenings from Paizo related to the Pathfinder role-playing game, or third-party publishers, or, as we're going to talk about a medium amount today, licensees. But first, Paizo has announced a whole bunch of new activity on their Twitch channel, including 2 new stream shows. One of them I am super excited about. The other one I am interested in. Param, you might be surprised. Actually, you might not be surprised about which is which. What do you know about Starfinder Extreme and Band of Bravos?
So I know that Starfinder Extreme. What? I thought it was Extreme.
Technically, it's the acronym XTREM, which would be extreme if pronounced properly, which there's a lot I like just about this title. First of all is that if you are pronouncing it right, it loses all effect. Second of all is that it's got initials and an exclamation point, and there's both the period at the end after the M and the exclamation point in the logo. Like, there's a lot of kitschiness about this that is perfectly in line with the topic, which is Starfinder professional wrestling.
So is this roleplayception?
How so?
Like, is there actually a wrestling league, or are they role-playing what it would be like today.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so are they performers or are they athletes? That's what you're
Right.
getting at?
Mm-hmm.
So the first episode went up on April 8th, but I went looking for it on the YouTube channel on April 9th, and it wasn't there yet, but it has been uploaded since then. So I got to make some time. I think it's a 3 or 4 hour episode to catch the first one before the second one goes up, because it's GM'd by Amanda Hammond, who is the managing developer and co-creator of Starfinder, and of course she plays in Stellar here on the No Direction Network. And you know, we had her on the GMing episode a couple of weeks ago because she's a great GM. She's known for it, and so a stream where she is GMing is going to be super exciting. And of course, it's Starfinder Wrestling. So whether it's kayfabe or whether it's just like UFC but with a wrestling varnish on it, either way, I am super happy to see how this goes.
I mean, we've joked that Starfinder can do everything and anything, so I'm not surprised that it's going here, and I'm curious as to why it hasn't gone here sooner. So, great concept. I really, really, really will enjoy watching this one.
Sheppy and Jet says that it is amazingly fun, and the references to old wrestlers is gold. Oh, good. Because, you know, Amanda and I have chatted casually at PaizoCons and whatnot. Wrestling has never come up. So I'm very curious what was the motivation to run this. I am very much looking forward to seeing how she pulls it off.
Mm-hmm. We have a Darth Kristolov? Dark Kristov? In chat, sorry, your name came up as very dark blue on the background, so I had a difficulty there. Dark Kirstoff.
Christoph.
Yeah, they say, I don't know why I'm more behind on streams and podcasted during the quarantine instead of less, but here I am, way behind. The reason is that your routine is interrupted, and podcasts usually are listened to or consumed as a way to make a rather tedious part of a routine less tedious. In fact, most podcasts are consumed during commutes, and we're not doing that now.
Yeah, that is 100% why I am listening to less podcasts. I have got a backlog of stuff, especially because we just launched 2 new podcasts. And so I've been making a priority listening to our stuff first, which leaves me only a little bit of time for, I think I've basically got 3 other podcasts in my rotation. I haven't even been listening to Buffering. It would be the 4th one anytime that some time came up for me. But yeah, and the streams I very rarely watch unless I've got like a long activity, like when I'm cleaning up my office or whatever. So yeah, I really wish Paizo would release these shows as podcasts. It's just how I consume media.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even like even the big ones like Glass Cannon and a Critical Role. I don't do the video versions. I just want to listen. Says the podcasters.
I don't know why. I don't know why it's so easy to export the audio. My only assumption is that they do really seem to know what they're doing with Twitch, and so they're worried about cannibalizing the Twitch audience if there is another way that you can get these. That's my only theory. I haven't talked to Paizo's which department would handle this. I haven't talked to anyone at Paizo about why they don't release these as podcasts, but I wish they would.
Me too. Absolutely. I definitely would campaign for it.
Speaking of campaign, the other new stream show is Band of Bravos. It's GM'd by Jason Bowman, who people are definitely familiar with as the director of game design. It's got Jason Keeley as one of the players. Jason Keeley, who also plays on Adventurous, and he's a good friend of ours. A troupe of performing adventurers find themselves hired to put on the show of a lifetime. This sounds like the original idea for Extinction Curse. It was, well, you remember from the Ron Lundeen interview where he was saying that he wrote circus in the outline, but he actually meant like just carnival performers traveling from town to town. And then when art started coming in, and it was very much emphasizing Big Top and Ringling Brothers style circus, it changed the tone, and he changed the adventure path to match. Band of Bravos feels like the original idea, the pre-typo version.
Oh, so we've got full Something Wicked This Way Come vibes?
Maybe. I don't know enough about Something Wicked with This Way Comes to say yes or no. John Bastille says, I wish I could stream Twitch to my TV. Is that not something you can do, Param? If you were watching Twitch on your TV, on your phone, and you had something like a Google, what is it called? The Google Stream Drive thing.
You're
Google
talking,
Drive, right?
you're talking about casting it to your TV. I forgot what it was called even. So sorry there. But certain devices can, but they have started to like remove Twitch from a lot of devices lately. I know if you had Roku's, it got removed. I would not be surprised if it was removed from the Google one as well. Sheppy says you still can do it on the Xbox. That's good to know. Basically,
Steel says he doesn't have a smartphone, so that does eliminate what I was just saying.
Yeah, you can't screencast it without a Chromecast is the name of the device. Thank you, Dragon Elves. I have 3 of them. I should remember its name. But they ever since Amazon bought them out, they have been kind of plucking them out of some ecosystems and abandoning the clients.
Any other thoughts about all the new shows that are coming to Paizo's Twitch stream?
I'm really glad that they decided to go with 2 very well done shows like this with full production values and like a good amount of the crew. And I'm also glad that Starfinder got one. Because before it was all PF2 because it was PF2's launching, we need to get it out here. And so just to see the crew that helps make these games or helps a lot of them are like on non-creative sides of the fence here, and just to see the crew that helps get these games to us in figurative and literal senses play these games is a lot of fun. And I think having these sorts of experiences where you have both extremely proficient role players and people having a great time is a much more needed facet of the actual play ecosystem, more so than we already have tons and tons and tons of shows that are basically so produced that they might as well be scripted, even though they aren't. And I loved watching Oblivion Oath because you could tell that like this was really a game with like a bunch of people that did not know what was happening.
I also appreciate that the 2 new Paizo ones are not based on the adventure paths and don't seem like they're products that they are pushing. It's an original adventure, which is as much of the appeal as the cast and the GMs.
Mm-hmm. That's it. We need to stop doing adventure paths, we say on the adventure path episode.
Oh yeah. Well, just because this was an adventure path episode doesn't mean not doing adventure paths is not also an option.
True.
Something else we talked about in this episode was action figures. And hey, Param, there's a new licensee.
There is.
But
oh no.
It's Toy Vault. Toy Vault is a producer of licensed material, usually board games and plushes. Mm-hmm. Now, the press release specifically calls out toys and collectibles. Oh no, plush toys and collectibles, which might give people that are excited about certain types of Pathfinder or licensed toys, might get them excited, but also does not specifically call out that they're doing action figures. Nothing in Toy Vault's catalog says we should expect them to make action figures. But this is the closest we've gotten to a licensee making toys out of Pathfinder, Starfinder, and other Paizo intellectual properties. So in a lot of ways, it's still a win. It's just not the win I was hoping for.
Well, wait, didn't they do those like little minifigs?
The goblins? But they're inanimate.
No, the posable ones like Ostog the Unslain and Random Ranger.
Oh, the mini-mates. Yeah. Yeah, they did. They did the mini-mates, and I've got a bunch of them. They're all right.
Yeah. I'm surprised they're not pop figures yet.
Yeah, I am also surprised they're not pop figures. Funko will get any license they want. But speaking specifically about Toy Vault, so they do specialize in plushes and a lot of things in plush type categories. So don't be surprised if you get some kind of Skittermander slippers or Goblin slippers, something along those lines, something fun and plushy. It's going to be a mix of just straight up plushes and practically applied plushes. And they do good quality work. I worked with Toy Vault briefly when we were doing Board Game Mento because one of our earliest boxes had a Toy Vault game in it. they're nice people. They do quality work. And I think this is a license with a lot of potential. Just not exactly the license I was hoping for.
This is a lot of stuff I see at GameStop these days.
Ah, that's a good point.
I hope this means we finally get a Gom Gom.
Oh, Gom Gom is the owl bear.
The bear owl.
The bear owl, yes. Oh, so what are some of the things you can expect, or are hoping to get plushes out of? I know we got one guess from Tim Drake on our Facebook page.
Well, again, I definitely want Gom Gom. I imagine they're going to do a new roundabout of the plush goblins because they kind of have to. I hope they take on plush kobolds because it seems that kobolds are taking the place that goblins used to occupy in Pathfinder.
Are they really, though?
Are they? I mean, it appears so.
Does it? Like, I just don't think that kobolds have the same traction that Pathfinder goblins had.
I don't think they do, but that's kind of where they're filling in the... No, they're not going to be able to inspire and rebrand an entire company, except for they did that once with a different company.
Okay, so Gom Gom, and actually I looked it up. I remember making a prediction, but maybe I'm thinking of something in Discord.
I would absolutely love to have like something that's a little more in joke, like a Whispering Tyrant plushie to sit next to my Cthulhu plushie.
Okay, I could see that. So my mistake. It was Dustin, and I've mixed up Dustin and Tim before, and I don't know why I keep doing that. Dustin on our Discord was saying he wants a Leshy, and I can see a Leshy plush being pretty awesome.
Oh yeah,
and that's
like the
Leshies are closer to what I think of when I think of the new Goblin.
Yeah, the one that's riding the plant fox.
I mean, any Leshy will do.
I know, but that one's adorable, and that has art. Also, a plant fox would be great.
I cannot picture this art you're talking about. What's it from?
Ultimate Wilderness?
Oh, okay. It's a first edition book.
Yeah. I'm talking about the Leshy that has like the hammer and the weird helmet and its round face.
That's usually how I picture Leshies, and he's on a fox.
I think he was... I might be misremembering everything. I'm a horrible fan.
It's all right. Did you want to look this up, or do you want to move on?
There's no need. Yeah, he's on the plant fox. I found him.
All right. Well, sure.
I'm gonna put him up on. I'm putting him up on screen. That's what I'm gonna do.
I'm looking at the screen.
All right.
I know it's gonna be a second. The Leshy Knight in the Leaf World. On a Leaf Wolf. He says.
Okay, Leaf Wolf. Not Sheffy. Wait, Sheffy, did you draw this? I think you may
that'd be cool.
Drawn this. I might be completely wrong, and if I am, sorry, Sheffy.
I'm waiting for it to come up on screen.
And there it is.
Oh yeah, I recognize him.
Yeah, like he's like the second he came out, he's appeared on like so many different products, and everybody wanted to use him as an avatar. This is definitely the Leshy that has stolen everyone's heart.
And Sheppy says that no, he did not make it, but it is one of his favorite pieces of first edition art. So I do think that this is actually a very significant license for Paizo. I think Toy Vault has the distribution that they can get Paizo products and Paizo recognizable items across different conventions and possibly into more game stores and more mainstream hobby stores like a Game Loft or that kind of store. So I am looking forward to seeing how this develops because it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that this does get to grow and we see a lot of cool things. But boy, was this really the wrong time to announce something like this, because all the hype is going to hit when we can't rush and buy anything.
Well, I mean, they're just announcing the license. It's not like they could show us product that we could buy at the next convention anyway.
Good point.
Such as Origins, which should have been in June or was originally planned for June. Origins has been moved officially to October, which is an interesting move. A lot of big conventions have been canceled. This one has officially been moved, and Origins Online will take place in June. So, Param, this is one of those big conventions you were watching for to get an idea of what to expect for just what the state of the convention circuit is. What do
Yeah.
you think of Origins being moved?
I think that puts all of the summer convention season completely in question. Origins is one of those absolutely massive conventions that has a lot of connections to the industry. A ton of the industry is built up around it. The Origin Awards are an incredibly important part of the annual game cycle. And yeah, it's not the biggest convention going. I mean, it's not a Gen Con, but it's like half a Gen Con. And it being moved after so many years of being rock solid just basically means that I don't really see any convention happening anytime in the summer convention season. I don't see Gen Con happening. I don't see Dragon Con happening. I don't see, obviously, Origins is not happening. And I would bet that the next time we get to do any sort of con activity is going to be next summer.
So, do you think this could potentially be canceled again in October?
Yeah. I mean, basically, we can't have a convention with, you know what convention's like. We are literally shoulder to shoulder, and like not figuratively.
Opposite of social distancing.
Yeah. We are social sardines, and and we already make jokes about con cred because I come back from any given convention and I get sick for 3 days. There's no way that you can do a convention safely, even after the COVID season's over, because that's going to be the area where it's just going to absolutely thrive until there's like a vaccine for this thing.
Coronavirus.
Oh no, this isn't. Oh, I'm going to edit that out.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. So Origins was originally going to be June 17th, 21st, and Gen Con this year is, I believe, July 30th. It's one of the earlier times for Gen Con in the last, in recent years. So that's only a 5-week distance. And the fact that we're hearing about Origins moving its date now, we've got to hear something about Gen Con soon.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine Gen Con is the biggest one with the most contractual obligations. I imagine they are going to wait until they absolutely have to announce, but I definitely expect them to not to happen at all. Like there might be a virtual Gen Con, like a lot of these conventions are doing. Origins is doing a virtual Origins on the weekend of Origins, but no, we're not going to have anything like that. They're definitely going to cancel, but I expect we won't hear about it until like maybe a month beforehand.
Yeah, and we don't have any details about Origins Online. It's mentioned that those dates are now going to be an online convention.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what that convention is going to look like. And if you click on the link at the bottom, it just goes to the Origins page. So Origins Online is a thing, but what that thing is unclear.
Mm-hmm. Well, after that bit of news, do we have anything nice to talk about?
Yeah, there was something unusual. I was not expecting this. It's Sirenscape announced Sirenscape Radio.
Yeah, this was weird and kind of cool.
Yeah, so if you're the kind of person that likes to work to like movie soundtracks and that kind of thing, I'll often, depending on the mood I'm trying to get in, I will go to the Google Play Music the channel for just like epic superhero scores. And so the idea that Sirenscape is using, it's non-repeating, I forget the terminology they use, but Sirenscape, we all know it. They make the sound sets that you press play. It provides atmospheric music. It is not just the same thing on loop. It is procedurally generated. I think that's how the soundtracks are described. And of course, Sirenscape is, we have some kind of arrangement with Sirenscape for Adventurous. So for full disclosure, we have a partnership with Sirenscape, but like Sirenscape is also Sirenscape. Like they're big enough that everyone knows that when they do something big, it usually gets talked about as news. So Sirenscape Radio are just 4 different radio stations at the moment. One of them is called Relax, one of them is Fantasy, one of them is Particle, and one of them is Cthulhu. And it's basically, instead of saying something that is a little more atmospheric for the game, where it is supposed to draw attention to itself, this is a little bit more setting a mood, and you just play it in the background while you're working or, just hanging out at home, maybe doing some dishes.
Yeah, because a lot of people, when they're trying to do actual productive work, can't have music on that has lyrics because that becomes a distraction. Especially, I know a lot of people who do writing, prefer like office work type writing, can get distracted if like their favorite song comes on and their lyrics suddenly start bleeding into what they're typing.
Dynamic sound. That is how Sirenscape describes the way it makes it sound.
It's wonderful. We love Sirenscape.
So Sirenscape Radio is free if you are a subscriber, and I believe there is a 1-month free trial right now. Basically, go to sirenscape.com/radio if you are curious about this and read up on it. Ben Looms is a good guy. Sirenscape is an amazing product, and it is something that if you're just looking for more ways to fill your ears, fill the silence, this is something you can explore.
Yeah, and we used it during the Adventurous stream time before last as a fun thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually it's added in post-production.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in that particular case, Crystal wanted to set the atmosphere, and so we played it live.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, this is another licensee-related piece of news. It's a small one, though. So Comixology and Dynamite are offering 51 free titles.
Ooh.
They are digital titles, and they are all number ones, and one of them is Pathfinder number 1.
Ooh.
So if you have a Comixology account and you've been curious about the Pathfinder comic but never checked it out, check it out. Pathfinder number 1 was one of the ones written by Jim Zub, and it kicked off was it a 12-issue arc or 24-issue arc? The Darkwater Goblins.
It was 2 6-parters, so 12.
Yeah. And it was good. Especially the first issue really won me over, and it's the reason that I've collected every Pathfinder comic.
Yeah.
Not necessarily every cover.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not,
I know.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Param. I was trying to find a polite way of saying I don't have a problem.
I know, right? Yeah. I currently am trying to figure out where I'm going to get another storage building because of my problem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Actually, the Pathfinder comics was the things that first started breaking me from my completionism, because there was no way on earth I was going to chase down a 101 and 172 variant cover when there were like 30 other variant covers for that comic.
Yeah, there were a lot of variant covers, and a lot of them are fun, especially the ones that are movie poster homages.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just a fan of the iconic designs, there's great original art for them, because I think every single cover is an original piece to the comic. Like there's some variations, like there's the one with no logos, but it's also art from another comic. There's the black and white version, but it's nothing that's just been taken from the game or taken from elsewhere. These are all original pieces to Dynamite Comics.
Yeah, and we had, if you went to Gen Con the year it launched, because it only launched like a month beforehand, or actually did it launch at Gen Con?
I think it launched at Gen Con.
Yeah, you could get a blank one, and the artist was there to do you a custom cover. So I have a couple of those, and those are wonderful. Andrew
Errata. He was the artist for the first 3 arcs, I believe.
Yeah,
maybe it was just the first arc.
You will be surprised reading the first arc of Pathfinder, the comic book, because it is surprisingly brutal. Much, much more brutal than Pathfinder art usually gets.
Yes, whereas later series, the tone seemed to match the game art a lot more. I never had a problem with his art, only that it was a strange fit. And I did enjoy it when it became a little more in line with what I expect from Paizo, from Pathfinder art.
Right. But Jim Zub's character work on those comics was absolutely amazing. He did a really good job of fleshing out the personality and intricacies of this group of iconics that up until now we had only seen as example art.
Yeah, and like the Mercial Kira relationship that first became canon in the comics. It wasn't even a hint of that until people were flipping through and saw in a panel that Kira was gay, and later that relationship was developed over the next couple of issues.
Mm-hmm.
So these comics may be more influential than you're aware of if you haven't been reading them. And we don't know when the next series is coming out. So I appreciate that Comixology gave me an excuse to talk about the comic again, because I really like the Pathfinder comic. I not just saying that as a Pathfinder fan, but like I am specifically a fan of the Pathfinder comic as well.
Yeah, it was like the novels that we also like, is that it had no business being as good as it was. It was tie-in fiction. We've seen how this works. I worked at the comic shop for years. I've shelved so many RPG comics and game comics on the shelf, knowing that they were going to be absolute trash, and not worth the price of the paper it was printed on. But Pathfinder's comic was good, well developed, great storylines, and well put together arcs. It did not, like, the fact that happened is just almost miraculous.
And Dungeon Novice points out that Crystal wrote Spiral of Bones, which might be my favorite of the miniseries. That's all I've got for news. Param, we've got a couple of minutes if there's anything you want to banter about before we move on to the shoutouts.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Except for, I don't know. I made this.
Oh boy, I said a couple of minutes. That is a deep dive.
That's a deep dive.
Can this be a
topic.
tease for a future episode?
Let's make it a future episode, or maybe a Geek Together. But I've gotten way back into painting minis, and oh boy, has it been a nice creative outlet, and nice. I'm taking not usual approaches.
Yeah, that's one way to put it, Param.
Is the other part where I'm like making my own custom badger riding dwarves?
There's that. There's just like, oh yeah, I painted up some minis with this paint I made. It's like, when you say you made your paint.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something we're going to have to talk about when we have fewer news items and just a little more time, because I am looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So pay attention. And for those of you who are on our Discord server, you've already got a little bit of a sneak peek of what I'm working on, because we have a painting area, a painting channel where we all love to show off our art and any other of the nerdy things that we do creatively here. It mostly is a lot of painted miniatures and really cool maps. But if you can go to our Discord and join the chillest Pathfinder community that is out there by going to nodirectionpodcast.com and clicking on the Discord link on the right-hand side of the page. And there, you'll be able to join us. And all the fans and most of the personalities on No Direction hang out there pretty much all day.
We will be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shoutouts.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 226 of No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. And thank you, of course, to Crystal Frasier, our wonderful guest, our wonderful GM, and our good friend at this point. She's just great. And I am amazed at how early it is, because it felt like we covered a lot of ground in this episode. This was a very densely packed interview segment and news segment. Like we were efficient this episode, Pam.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're trying to speedrun this, much like our adventuring speedruns.
Oh, what was the name of the speedrun podcast?
The Dashing Dwarves. Yeah.
Oh, I was so proud of that.
I mean, every dwarf is dashing when he's just trying to keep up with the fighter.
But they also they spend so much time on their grooming and on their armor. Like, there were levels. I could picture exactly what the Dashing Dwarves show is all about. We're referencing our April Fool's joke from a couple of weeks ago, which, just to make sure that word is out there that this is not an actual podcast that we're bringing over. We were talking about the Dashing Dwarves, the actual play speedrun podcast, which does not exist. That is not a thing. That is a video game thing. Speedrunning an adventure path is weird.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, man. So, we already have a group that's doing marathoning adventure paths with ordering Amber dice. I mean,
Like, that's how you
technically-
do an adventure path. You take your time, you appreciate it all, you pace yourself. You don't try and get through it.
Fair.
So I've got some shout outs. I have several shout outs, in fact, some of which overlap.
Okay.
We're going to get right into it, starting with Isolacon. Isolacon is something that we brought up last week. It is the Andrew and Monica Marlowe, as well as the Four Horsemen, so Clay Clouser, Steve Helt, and Scott McKendry, and just more and more people are involved in this every week. It is as it says on the Facebook page, it is the product of several tabletop RPG creatives getting together to spread some good in uncertain times. It is this weekend, April 18th and 19th, and it is a fundraiser to benefit the RPG Creators Relief Fund. So Andrew and Monica have reached out to us. I am playing in Andrew's Numenera game with Clinton Boomer is in that game. I believe Owen is in that game. Let me make sure I get the list of people correct. But Param, I know you're in some way connected to Isolacon. What is your involvement?
I just talked with early planning. That's all. I'm not going to be in any games or anything. I've got a lot of other commitments I need to take care of.
That's fair. Here it is. The Skin. I don't know if this is an old English way of spelling skin, but it's Skin of the Blackbone Bride live play. It's on April 19th. It is at 4:00 Eastern. It is myself. It is run by Andrew. So other players are Monica, Clinton Boomer, as I mentioned, Elisa Teague. Why is Monica mentioned twice here? That's strange. And Scott Fernandez. They are the players in the game, and
I mean, it sounds like a really good crew, especially several of them are very, very familiar with the Cypher system.
Yeah, which I am not. So hopefully I will be able to just muscle through it by role playing alone, and they'll guide me through any of the crunchy part of the system.
Oh, you'll do fine. The Cypher system, one of its best joys is how it's got a lot of depth, but explaining it and using it is very simple.
Oh, here we go. Seth Skorkowski. That is the last of the players that is. Sorry, I mentioned someone who was not actually going to be playing in the game because I was looking at the wrong place. So Scott Fernandez will be attending the event. He is not going to be sitting in at the table. But yeah, we've got RPG Superstars. We've got any award winners. We've got, Owen. Is there any way to sum up Owen's contribution to the game industry? So yeah, I do not normally play games other than Pathfinder, and so it will be fun for me to just try and keep up with these people that I know are extremely creative and also far more familiar with it than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I want to give a shout out specifically to Andrew and Monica, because what they have put together in just a couple of weeks is extremely impressive, and the fact that every few hours it feels like there's an update about what is going on with Isolacon and how it's growing, it's expanding. And I know if we ever do a no direction convention, we are definitely going to, like an online convention, we're going to tap Andrew and Monica's experience from this and see what they can do to help us to make that a real event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like almost zero notice. And we hear about like how many like famous game industry people are going to be participating in it and some of the prizes that they've managed to secure. It's kind of nuts.
Another couple of shout outs. So I said I had conflicting shout outs. There are two things that I am shouting out to that are taking place tomorrow night.
Oh dear.
Somewhere between 7:00 and 10:00. Oh wait, they're in different time zones. Is there an overlap? No, there's still an overlap. So one of them is that the Guild, as in the Felicia Day web series, the cast will be reuniting and playing a session of Dungeons and Dragons and live streaming it.
Oh, that sounds sweet.
Yeah, I am a fan of the Guild from way back when. I believe I caught it after the first session. The first season was done, but before they got like real money and put out the second season. I've got some issues of the Guild comic. Some of them. The first issue is signed by Felicia Day and one of the other actresses. I forget her name. But I only wanted the one signature, but they were at the signing table together, and I got two, and now it's like I have to find the entire cast to sign this because it's weird that I have just those two names. Like Felicia Day wrote the comic and was, the producer and the creative mind behind the Guild. So
Right.
There was a reason to have her signature alone. But once I got a second cast member, no, I need the entire cast.
I mean, the guild is important not just in nerd circles. It was one of the very first series that proved that independent filmmaking on the internet and with small budgets was not only possible, it could be glorious.
Yeah, it basically invented the term web series. What's his name? Joss Whedon credits Felicia Day and the guild for making him want to do Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along blog, which then was like the first mainstream produced. Like what the guild had done was now being treated like legitimate media, and it's gone on ever since. Like, this is a pre-Netflix, pre-live streaming videos, and now everything we do, Twitch, all of this, a lot of it owes credit to the guild for its success.
Yeah, if you can get a chance, audience, you can get it on Audible. We're the only podcast not sponsored by Audible. Or you can get the physical version.
The guild is on Audible?
No, this book is that I'm going to recommend.
Oh, okay.
Felicia Day's autobiography, You're Never Weird on the Internet, is a fascinating read about one of the more interesting people in creative circles and exactly how big a deal putting the guild together and trying to establish independent filmmaking on the internet was. You should all go read that book for how insightful it is towards the very foundation of a lot of what we take for granted.
Going on at the same time as the Guild Plays Dungeons & Dragons live stream, my friend Danielle will be on Kara the Blonde Unicorn talking about pitching board games. So Kara the Blonde Unicorn does a web series. It is board game focused, but she talks to a lot of female designers, a lot of people that are in the board game hobby and board game industry. And she's fun and light, and she's a good interviewer. And, you know, Danielle's one of my best friends, so it's cool to see her getting these opportunities. It's weird that she's competing with Felicia Day, but hey, good for her. She's in the same space as Felicia Day for 5 minutes.
I believe that she's at least in the same temporal space as Felicia Day at her entire lifetime.
Yes, but like, she's in the same conversation in multiple contexts.
I have a shout out.
Go for it.
Okay. I want to shout out to the Fat Right Genius Adventure Mega Bundle that got put together. I don't know why this got put together, but it's really cool. It's like 800 something PDFs from like all the major companies for like $35, and it includes a lot of like the greatest hits that we've talked about on the show, like the Spellpoint Compendium and the Time Thief, as well, like a bunch of the Adventure Week stuff. It's got a bunch of stuff in it, and I just saw that they were putting this out, and I was like, oh, that deserves a shout out. It's a crazy good bundle.
I have one more shout out. It's a podcast shout out, but I'm breaking from my normal routine of going to the next alphabetical podcast because this is one that I only just heard about. It's On the Shoulder of Dwarves. It's a gaming podcast. It's very similar in format to the old Private Sanctuary podcast, and now Digital Divination and Legend Lore, our two new podcasts. And the reason it came to my attention is because their latest episode, which came out this week, was also on prepping to run an adventure path. And so I grabbed the episode just to make sure that there was not too much overlap in what we talked about. And there was not. We went in very different directions with it. And so if you were curious about a different take on that, On the Shoulder of Dwarves, you can go to dwarves.podiant.co to check it out. They've got 99 episodes out now. The Prepping Adventure Paths was their 99th. And there's a couple of the topics just from a glance, because I've subscribed to it. So I just downloaded the one episode at first, and about halfway through, I was like, no, I want to keep listening to these guys. I like what they have to say. They are very good about staying on topic. They're clearly informed. They've both got some writing credits. I do not have their names handy. Otherwise, I would be mentioning them. What was one of the topics that I thought sounded interesting? Oh, Making the Players Feel Smart is episode 96. So that's the next one I'm going to download and listen to because I have never heard that topic before, and it sounds really interesting and something that I would appreciate as a GM. Finally, Param, I don't have a shout out. I have homework for the audience.
Homework?
So I just mentioned Digital Divination. That's Ron and John's new, their new podcast. Their second episode came out this week. And at one point, Ron mentions Thirsty Hillman's reaction to something. And Ron was saying like, oh yeah, up in Canada, Thirsty was doing this. And then it was like, anytime he mentioned Thirsty, geographically speaking, he just said Canada. He didn't mention, I believe Edmonton is where Thirsty was from. It's completely non-specific. Canada is geographically the largest country in the world. And it is a pet peeve of mine, and I know of a lot of Canadians, that the most specific people can get is the country. And so everyone's got homework of find any Canadian game designer you know, figure out where they live, find a map of Canada, and figure out where they live. Just look at the map, put your pins down, put me over here all the way on the east in Montreal. Thirsty is much further west. He's right in the middle. Just to start figuring out what this country that has been around for a long time, does a lot of things really great, and some of your favorite game designers are from there. What is this country, baby? Find out about. And then there will be an exam next week.
An exam, yeah.
Not next week. Next week is beyond. It'll be in 2 weeks.
No, it'll be next week because that's when we need to counter program with our own content like Felicia Day and the Board Game Podcast.
Oh, but that's not... They're two completely different people. Like, Guild is working off of Geek... is it Geek and Century? No, actually, I'm not sure. It might just be their own thing. Where are they producing this from? Oh, it's a charity stream for No Kid Hungry. I guess I should have mentioned that. Twitch.tv/Felicia Day. It's her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to wrap things up, Param?
I am ready to wrap things up.
Oh, sorry. Chat is talking about Canada. Yes, Dungeon Novice, you can do wrestlers instead. Justin Sluters, Canada's about maple syrup, moose, and hockey. I mean, you're not that far off. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.